All right, so we just covered warm outreach, how to post content, how to monetize content, cold outreach, paid ads, and monetizing paid ads. And finally, we get to put it all together into putting those things on steroids. And I'm amped for this. So let's rock and roll. So I'll give you a framework that I actually taught as an impromptu thing to a small group of entrepreneurs who are all doing, I think, $1 to $10 million a year. I got a lot of positive feedback. It was like one of the major things that they said at the end that they like really got a lot out of. And so I want to break this framework down for you. And so when I attack a business, when I say attack a business, like we buy into a business, we invest in it, and we want to scale it. I think to myself, more, better, new. It's just a very easy framework to think of like, how can we make this thing make more money, okay? And so you can write that down for yourself. For my business, how can I do more? How can I do better? How can I do new, all right? And so at this point in the book, or hopefully in your career, you've done some advertising. You've done some outreach, warm or cold. You've done some content. Maybe you've run some paid ads. And you know that the advertising that you do currently works to some degree, right? And so the next obvious thing that you can do is to get more engaged leads is more, a lot more. Crank up the volume to your max capacity. Because one of the questions I ask when we invest in a company is, okay, so what are we currently doing? And they say, we do outreach, we do content, we do paid ads. And I say, okay, what's stopping us from doing 10 times more of that? More. Nothing better, nothing new. Because if it is working, fundamentally, because of the economics of the business, like they are making money, then why can't we do more? And it's crazy how infrequently the entrepreneur will ask this question, and it's because they're so close to it. So I'm asking this question to you so that you can ask this question to yourself. Okay, I'm doing cold outreach. Cool. Why can't you do from 100 a day to 1,000 a day? If you're doing cold calls, why can't you do 1,000 a day? If you're doing 1,000 a day in ad spend, why can't you do 10,000 a day? Like, what's stopping you? And as soon as you identify the thing that is stopping you, which oftentimes there's nothing, but if you can identify the thing that's stopping you, then that becomes the single constraint of the business. And that's what you attack, and that's what you solve. And so the simplest way that I do, especially if I'm working with an entrepreneur who's new or trying to start out, is I use something called the rule of 100, okay? Which is very simple. You advertise your stuff by doing 100 primary actions every day, 100 days in a row. That's it. Okay, so we walked through how to get warm outreach. Well, you do 100 outreaches a day, 100 days in a row. If you do cold outreach, you do 100 outreaches a day, 100 days in a row. If you're making content, you make 100 minutes of content, 100 days in a row. That's how you do it. And if you're running paid ads, you can do $100 a day, 100 days in a row. If you're like, well, I don't have that, you can adjust it down, at least from the paid ads perspective. The other ones, I absolutely expect that. Okay? And so this is how I broke it down for each of these. What I want you to do, and the reason I simplified the core four into things that one person can do to let other people know about their stuff, is that this is 100% in your control. So if you look at your day and you're like, I'm not getting enough leads, it's because you are not doing enough of the core four. Simple. And when you break that down to the primary actions, which with warm reach outs, it would be, are you emailing 100 times a day? Period. Yes or no? If you're not doing it, do that first. And you might be like, wow, that's gonna take me like 4 hours. Yep. And then you're gonna have your workday start. Welcome to owning a small business. If you're like, man, it's gonna take me 4 hours to do 100 phone calls. Yep. Welcome to owning a small business. It's gonna take me 4 hours to do 100 direct messages. Yup. Welcome to owning a small business. Again, this is just you. We're gonna put leverage on this literally in the next section. All right, but you have to know how to do more. And the first baseline that I want everyone to get through is doing 100 a day, because you will appreciate, one, the value of a lead, and two, you will develop such a good skill set from getting that many repetitions in that you'll be able to transfer it and teach it to other people. And knowing how to make it rain as a business owner is probably the single most valuable skill that you can have. Because for the rest of your life, you will never worry about eating, because you can always pick up the phone and make money. Like, that's what I want to transfer to you. Okay? From the content perspective, you want to make sure you're releasing at least one per day on a platform. As you get better, post even more. So the example of primary actions here, because if you're like, okay, how do I translate that into tactics? 100 a day. And so for this would be short and long videos, articles, podcasts, infographics. Figure out what the thing is that you're going to be making and make sure you're posting them every day. Every day. And if you can do it on multiple platforms, because you have 100 minutes per day making content, then do that. And guess what? You will get better. And then eventually, someone will ask you, after you give them enough value, if you have more, to which you will happily accept their money. Cold reach outs, same exact thing as warm reach outs, except I just added some other ones in here. Flyers, cold calls, etc. And as with all cold advertising, just expect lower response rates. That's where using automation can make up for the amount of volume that you can personally do, okay? And then finally, paid ads, direct mail, seminars, podcast spots, any social media ads, all of these things are ads that you can buy. And you can measure it on a monthly basis, you can measure it on a daily basis, it depends on the platform. But fundamentally, as long as you're running ads, and if you want to use your learning budget as the thing that you're willing to just invest in your money printing machine, just see it like that. If I spent a year to create a machine that gave me 10 to 1, would it be worth it? Yeah, because the next month you could recoup all your money. And almost every time I've built a paid ads machine, that's what's happened. It's taken me 6 months, 12 months sometimes to make the machine, and then once the machine's there, I crank it and I make all the money back. You just have to believe it's possible. And so here's the pro tip. More ads means better ads means more leads. So I said this earlier, and I'm going to repeat this because it's so important. Facebook reviewed the accounts of all advertisers on their platform. They found something curious. The top 0.1% of advertisers test 11 times more creative than everyone else. Oftentimes, it's not that you can't scale an ad properly, it's that you can't scale a mediocre ad profitably. And the only way to find the exceptional ads is to make 11 times more of them. Success leaves clues. Do what the 0.1% do and get what the 0.1% get. And I promise you, the best cold callers have made more cold calls than you. The best content creators have made more content than you. The best advertisers have made and spent more money on paid ads than you. And so if you want to have what they have, do what they did. So that's more. The next thing we can do in a business, or your business, is do it better. So getting better gets you more leads for the same effort. Think leverage. We want that. And we can only get better by doing one thing, testing. So you do more and more until it breaks, and then you make it better. So let's walk through this example. Let's see if 30% of people opt in, they give you free information, and then 5% apply for whatever thing that you sell or services, okay? And then 50% schedule after that point. Let's ignore the constraint for a moment and imagine that we improve each step by 5%. So 30% goes to 35%, which would be a 16% increase, which is 1.16. 5% becomes 10%, which is a 100% increase in leads, which is a doubling. And if 50%, adding 5% becomes 55%, scheduling is a 10% increase in leads. That's 1.1. So which one of these will we attack? The opt-in, the apply, or the schedule? We would attack the apply because the constraint you can define as the one that will have the largest percentage improvement in absolute measures. So you can just take an absolute percentage, add it up, and see which one of them will have the highest impact. And that's where you focus your energy. Because if we took that 5 and made it 20, we would 4x our throughput. And so even more than doing 4 times more, I would think to myself, well, is it easier for me to improve this from 5 to 20? Probably more than getting 4 times as many callers. Well, then I will focus on that. And so here's how I get better. I test one thing per week, per platform, and I do it for 4 big reasons. So number 1 is that if you test multiple things at the same time on one platform, you really never know what worked, which means you can never really learn, and that sucks. So knowing why something worked is helpful. Also, split tests affect each other, which is number 2. If I change the landing page and another thing, well, both of those things might affect something else. So I might get more leads, but they might be less qualified. And so it confuses the data. So we want to test one thing at a time. Number 3 is that when you purposely constrain yourself to one test at a time, then you prioritize the thing that you think will get you the most engaged leads. And so even though you could do lots of unlimited tests, you don't have unlimited time and unlimited resources. So you have to prioritize. And so you have to choose your tests wisely. And by doing it that way and adding in that constraint, you will focus yourself on the things that will give you the most bang for the buck. And then 4th, and probably the most important, is that you run the test long enough to see if you can actually get an improvement. All right, too short and you won't get enough data, and too long and you waste time you could have spent improving the next constraint. All right, so you want to have a big enough sample size, and all you have to do is Google statistical significance calculator and just type in the before and the after and see, and it'll show you the likelihood that the result is significant. If it is, take the winner, and then you move on. And that iterative process of doing that once a week, at the end of the year, you have 52 improvements. Now, you can run that process across multiple acquisition channels as long as they're independent. So if you run paid ads through an Instagram series of pages, and then you run paid ads through a YouTube series of pages, you can test parts of those different pathways independently. You just don't want to test multiple things in the same pathway. And so if we're getting 52 improvements a year, believe me, it improves a lot. And when I look at, just as a fun side note for you guys, over the last year and a half, gym launch, since we sold majority, has grown by 40%. And if you saw the quarterly goals that they outline, they have done literally nothing new. They look at the entire pipeline of how we get customers, and they say, okay, we're going to take show rates from 65% to 70% this quarter. And we're going to get our CTRs from 1.1 to 1.2. And we're going to get our pickup rates on our outbound from this to this. And here's how we're going to do it. And that is what they do over and over and over again. And by doing that, they unlock a better acquisition system than everyone else, because those incremental improvements are the things that other people don't know about and don't know why it worked. And that's why learning the things that mattered are the things that make you more valuable as an advertiser. Pro tip. When you're picking what to prioritize front to back. So same thing as we were saying earlier with David Ogilvy, and 80% of your advertising spent on the headline, and how we fixed the first 5 seconds of the video and it got 200 times the views. In general, the lowest percentage steps usually happen at the front, and the higher percentage step happen at the back. So as in 1% of people might click an ad, and then 30% will give you their contact information. This is why most times you'll end up focusing more on the front than the back, and that's fine. Those steps are usually the constraint. They have the largest returns for the smallest improvements. That's why they are the constraint. I will say that again. They have the largest returns for the smallest improvements. That is what makes them the constraint. So the call out, the value elements, the offer, the CTA, the landing page, the headline, the subheadline, the image, those are things that are down the pathway front to back. And so I would recommend you go down the pathway in the order of what the lead will see. Most times, that is where you get the most bang for the buck. Just one man's observation. More, better, new. When talking to businesses doing less than $1 million in profit per year, I usually advise them to just do more first. That's it. They haven't enough volume for percentage changes to make a big difference. But once you cross $1 million in annual profit, making things better can be the lowest cost, highest return thing you do. So once a business is big enough, I tend to flip the order from more, better, new to better, more, new. Again, just an advanced tip, just something that I've noticed. And so that leads us naturally to new. It's like, okay, well, I get more and I get better. So what about new? So after you've improved your marketing efforts through more and better, the only thing you have left is new places in new ways. All right? In simple terms, new. One of the big fallacies that I see, actually, is you have a small business owner, let's say a guy who owns a dry cleaning store, right? And then he starts marketing, and he sees another guy who's marketing on the same platform as him. And he's like, oh, I'm splitting the pie in half. It's me and this other guy. And then 2 other guys start marketing on the platform. And now he's only got a quarter of the pie. He's very sad for the dry cleaner, right? So he thinks, well, shoot, that's it. I've just divided this pie. But the reality is that they're using one medium on one platform in one targeted audience for one specific type of avatar. There's so much more attention out there you can possibly imagine. And so what most people think their market is one method, one platform, one medium, when in reality it is you've got warm outreach, you've got cold outreach, you've got posting content, you've got running ads, you've got that across Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, email, cold call, cold email, direct mail, Hulu, Spotify, radio ads, TV ads, like newspapers, like the list goes on in all of those things. And so they think that because somebody else is running an ad, they somehow split the pie when they haven't even gotten a seat at the table yet, all right? And so I can promise you that there's significantly more available to you. And let me see if I have this story in here. So I was talking to an agency owner who, it was a call that I took with, when we had our software company, Alan. It was all agency owners. And a guy got on and he said, hey, I think I've tapped my market. I was like, okay. Well, what are you doing in sales? He's like, well, I'm doing $2 million a year. I was like, okay. And what industry you go after? He said, chiropractors. I said, okay. Do you know how big that industry is? And so I Googled it with him live. I was like, okay, it's a $15 billion industry or whatever it is. It might be 10, I don't know. $10 or $15 billion industry. It's like, okay, so you think, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this right. You think that the $40,000 a month that you spend on Facebook ads has tapped the $10 billion industry of chiropractors. He's like, well, you say it like that, not really. I'm like, right, it's ridiculous. What it really means is that you have one channel that you have only been good enough, you've made ads good enough for this. Because here's a mental framework that I used, is that how many other chiropractor agencies are there? 100? 500? 1,000? and all of them still get customers every day? So why can't I go get all of the customers that all of those people are getting? Why not? Because we're not doing the things that those people are doing to advertise to get them. And so when I was trying to build Gym Loss to a juggernaut to take over the entire micro gym space, that's what kept me up at night. Whenever I saw that somebody else could acquire other gym owners that wasn't me, I knew there was more. Fundamentally, if there's possibility for any other competitor to exist in your marketplace, there is more media to be had. There is more advertising we could be doing. We could let more people know about the stuff we sell, and we're not doing it. So in that way, there's always more. And that's just of what you can see. There's still all of the other ways that no one else is even using. And believe it or not, most of the guys that you're competing against do barely anything. And so you don't have to do a lot to beat them, I promise you. You just got to show up and try consistently. And so next question is like, okay, well, what happens if you really have saturated a specific market? And I'll give you an example. So on the cold outreach side, we have talked to 20,000 gym owners. There's only 50,000 micro gym owners in the US. And so at that point, you're getting closer to saturating, a market, right? So when do you start trying to do new stuff? Well, if you've only talked to 1% of your marketplace, you probably keep going what you're doing. Talk to 10%, you can probably keep doing what you're doing, right? But you start approaching 20, 30%, then maybe you start needing to expand beyond that, okay? And so here's a little graph that I put here, which is from easy to hard. New placements is easier than new platforms, which is easier than a new method, which is the core 4. Think about it this way. If I make content on Instagram and I make posts there, if I then choose to make stories there, it would take minimal lift. If I make videos on YouTube and then I choose to make other smaller videos on YouTube or make a post on the community tab, which is another place you can make content, that is not a ton of effort. I'm already on there, already have an audience. It's just another way that I can communicate. And so if I run ads, for example, on Facebook and I do in the newsfeed, I can run ads in the stories, right? These are all just placements on platforms I already exist on. That is the easiest way to do something new. So if you're not already doing that, that would be the first type of new that I'd be willing to do. It's the lowest risk, highest return, next step. Second, lowest risk, highest return would be a new platform with a similar type of media. So if I make short videos on one platform, taking those short videos and making short videos on another platform, because again, I have similarities there, then I can then start that as my next new thing. The higher risk version of that would then be a different style on a different platform. So if I go from making long form YouTube videos to making short tweets to run ads or make content, that would be a big shift. It's a new platform and a new type of media. So the idea here, if you're just following along, is that in principle, we want to change as little as we can, just like we did more and new, because we're not trying to change a ton. Because what we already have is working. So we just want to take a half step. Because what happens is most people overcorrect and they pendulum swing the other side and they break everything. You just want to take a half step and juice the shit out of it. Get as much as you can out of it, and then take another half step and get as much as you can out of it. And then finally, you do a new core 4, which is the hardest thing to do. Because that's going from running paid ads to building an outbound team. It's from having an outbound team that does cold calls and cold emails to making content. They're completely different beasts. And so if you start with one, I would consider continuing to increase how much you make there, do more, do better, before adding new. By and large, you'll have the highest likelihood of making more money faster with least effort and least risk. And so here's the action step. Exhaust more, better first. Once you can't do any more, any better, meaning the returns are lower than putting the same effort into a new platform. That's the definition of when you know you can't do any more, any better. Try new. And use this rough order. New placement, new platform, new core 4. Get it going, measure how you do, and scale it from there using more, better. Then rinse and repeat. And so that is more, better, new, and how you put everything that we just went over on steroids. And so let me give you a little get lead summary. Advertising is the process of making known. It's what we do to let strangers know about the stuff we sell. And now we solve the stuff with your lead magnet or offer. But to get them to turn into engaged leads, you have to tell them about it. So we spent this section going over the only 4 ways a single person, you, can advertise and let other people know about their stuff. And that's the core 4. The next section, which is the second half of this training, I'll show you how to get other people to tell strangers about your stuff. So stay tuned, and that is the highest leverage thing that now that we have the core 4, we can play the advanced plays.